Hi guys, it's Miss Yandell here. I hope you're having a really great week. So today we are going to continue our discussion on major movements in American literature, and we are going to be discussing a movement within a movement, which is existentialism. The last time that I came to you and we discussed modernism, you'll remember that movement itself discusses a little bit about existentialism, but we want to spend a little bit of time today kind of discussing what it is and why it's so important. And you know me, it's not just essential to know what a movement is, but how it affects us today. So as we continue this journey through the major movements in American literature, I want you to really think about, how do I see this play out today? Have I adopted some of these ideas? Am I impacted by this movement within a movement? And how do I see it in people around me, in society around me? Okay, so let's just go ahead and discuss this movement itself. If you need to pause me, go ahead and do that, and we're just going to go ahead and get started then. Okay. Well, one of the things that it starts off saying about existentialism is that this is a group of attitudes. That's a big word right there. So the way we choose to see things, the way we embrace everything. An attitude is something that informs the way we perceive. Existentialism is very much about how we perceive things in our lives and ideas and philosophies. So, like for instance, let me give you a little for instance. If I choose today to have a good day, if I'm having a good day, then even things that aren't great, I still greet it. Like I'm informed by my quote unquote good day. And I may say, whatever, that's not going to affect me today. But if I'm having like a quote unquote bad hair day, or I just am that kind of person where nothing's going to go my way, nothing's going to be right today, then everything, even good things, I would inform, that's not enough. I have an attitude that informs what happens to me, whether it's bad or good. So I've heard people who had good things happen to them gripe about it. Like, but they never do anything else for me. And this might be nice now, but what are they going to do tomorrow? I mean, it's amazing how our attitudes can inform the way we perceive the world around us. And existentialism really is about perception. So let's go forward. So a group of attitudes about philosophical, religious, and artistic thought during and after World War II. So this really tells us this is coming later in modernism, right? So this is toward the end, after World War II and during World War II. And it really helps us, guys, to have a background in history. I know some people, when they get advised, they're taking courses and it's like, I have to take 2 history courses. Why do I have to take history again? Because history helps us understand time periods. And this is another thing. If you recall what's going on at this time period, there's a lot of unrest, and there are a lot of people who are disillusioned. We talked about this within the grander scope of modernism itself, but it informs everything. To have a good background in history and psychology is very, very advantageous for people who are studying literature. Those of you who are English majors, you need all of this information. You should be soaking it up, whether or not it's assigned. You should be interested in art and philosophy and history on your own, because it's all interconnected. Music too, FYI. But okay, we'll move on. This movement emphasizes existence rather than essence. So there's a real focus here on what it means to be a human being, on what it means to exist. What does this mean? What is this? And rather than the essence of life. So they're not necessarily contemplating a lot of, how is your day going? How's your quality of life? But this philosophy really begs to ask questions about, what does it mean to be a human being, a living and breathing human being? And they really focus on consciousness. What do we actually know? So, the modernists ask questions about everything, history, what we've been told, questioning, hey, what's a lie? Not that that's not a bad thing. I told you, a couple weeks ago, I think that's a great thing to ask questions about everything. Why do we believe this? Why do we act this way? Why do we respond this way? But on this one, their focus is very much about, this what are we as human beings and who are we as human beings? So they're going to be emphasizing our existence, our very existence, questioning what this is that we're doing in these bodies here. Okay. They see the inadequacy of human reason to explain the enigma of the universe as a basic philosophical question. Just they believe that everything we do as humans is inadequate. And how could we possibly know anything about anything? We're human beings. We're not here for thousands of years. We're here for, if we're lucky, 100. If we're blessed to live 100 good years, that's fortunate. How do we really know anything about anything? They get very introspective. This started happening, when we talked about psychology becoming such a prominent discipline and study area, as it still is today. But what exactly are we doing here with what we have? And what is all of this about? So very philosophical. One of the greatest leaders of this movement is in the next notation to you, the French novelist and philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre. He gave movement to this form and popularity. I want to say, you're going to find this interesting. Sartre is considered to be the premier. That's why he's listed here. This is the guy, when you talk about existentialism, his name comes up. Because his ideas were so essential to this movement. But what a lot of people don't know until they study this movement in some detail is the first existentialist, the first primary existentialist that we know was a guy named Kierkegaard. And he was a Christian, which I find very interesting. Existentialism itself has become to be associated as an atheistic movement, which Sartre popularized. But the first person working in this and with these ideas was actually Christian. So there you go. I think that's interesting. One of their primary beliefs and one of the primary things that they stand on is this next. You'll see these phrases a lot. Existence precedes essence. The significant fact is that we and things in general exist, but these things have no meaning for us except as we can create meaning through acting upon them. So, I feel like this makes a lot of sense. We're told a lot of things about the past. We're told a lot about what to believe, etc. But, it really comes down to what we're doing and what we believe right now, what's true to us in this moment. We can learn history. We can learn about what people are saying about different time periods. But all we truly know is what we have seen. And I say this sometimes in some of my other classes when we're talking about the senses. But all I know, I have read with my eyes, through my senses. I've heard, okay? I have reasoned with my own brain, everything. Even when you read the ideas of other people, it's still filtering through your sensory perception. Everything I know because I used my hands to feel it. I tasted it. I touched it. I heard it. I saw it. Does this make any sense? So I think this movement makes a lot of sense. Is all we truly know is what we have experienced for ourselves. Okay? So that's part of this. The next thing, there's a big emphasis on I think, I can think, therefore I exist, and just the following questions of what exactly does that mean? There's a personal commitment of this unique existing individual in the human situation. Much of the work that I have read by the existentialists really focuses on the individual to an extreme, and you can understand why, since we really can't speak for other people, really. All we can do is speak for ourselves and what we know to be true. All right. The next thing it says is that it attempts to codify the irrational aspect of human nature to objectify non-being or nothingness. Another word you'll hear in works by existentialists and people who are fascinated with this line of thinking is the word nothingness, because this is a huge you'll see this in a minute, but it's a huge reason for much of the anxiety that comes is what is there out there beyond what I know? What's there? Is it just great nothingness, or is there something? So they are obsessed with this idea of existing and then non-being and nothingness, and they see it as a universal source of fear. To distrust concepts and to emphasize experiential concreteness. And experiential concreteness, that's just a fancy way of saying What I experienced is what I know to be true. I have experienced it through the senses, and what I have sensed through my senses is as reliable as my senses are. And although not completely reliable, and there's a source of anxiety for you, what we see and feel and taste and touch may not always be true. I think about that thing you see every once in a while when somebody closes their eyes and then they have to taste 5 different things and see if they can guess what it is. It's incredible how many times we get that wrong. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? I mean, you would think if we've lived long enough, we would be able to tell the difference between macaroni and cheese and chocolate and some of these other things. But you see people fail these kinds of tests all the time, and it's just basically reiterating what the existentialists say, is that we can't necessarily depend on our senses. So if that's the way that we see everything, know everything, experience everything, how reliable is that? And when you start asking questions like this, you start understanding why there was so much anxiety and so much fear that comes, like, oh my gosh, there's like this, then what is it? What is true? And there becomes this obsession about existence. Well, certainly that follows when you start asking questions like that, right? Okay, anyway, let's move on. So human beings, immediate awareness of their situation. That's the next note, and I've been talking about that because that's all we know. A sense of meaninglessness in the outer world, which produces, please underline this if you have your copy, because I'm telling you, I see the effects of this every day of my life. Dealing with people, I see this, what they're talking about right here. A sense of meaninglessness in the outer world outside of us, which produces discomfort, anxiety, loneliness in the face of limitations, a desire to invest experience with meaning by acting upon the world. Okay, so what they're saying here is that when you really think about what is the meaning, what am I supposed to contribute? Who am I in all of this? What's reliable? And really, is there anything massively reliable? I mean, that's one of the questions here. And then you have these questions of, when you have this kind of discomfort and anxiety and loneliness, by the way, that only keeps increasing as these movements progress. Then it says a desire to invest experience with meaning by acting upon the world. Okay, one of the greatest things about existentialists is they believe, what all I truly know is what I can perceive right now is that I exist. What that means, I don't know. What's after, I don't know. Why I'm really here, I don't know. But all I can do is act upon the world now. And one of the greatest things about existentialists is they feel a responsibility to make the world a better place, however they can in the face of limitations. So there is this need within existentialists to do good work while you're here. Like, we have a responsibility to make the world a better place, even though we don't understand it, if that makes any sense. So the contributions that existentialists make, and that's what they're saying, by acting upon the world. It's an absurd world. That's another term, absurd. You'll hear that a lot with these thinkers in their works and writing, and we see it today as well. There's this issue with absurdity. It's an absurd world which leads to anguish, greater loneliness, and despair. So what we start seeing in the modern movement that we covered last time, and here, is it's just this loneliness, the despair, it increases as it goes on. Now, here's one thing. Human beings are totally free, but also wholly responsible for what they make of themselves. And this is kind of what I was talking about. These are kind of the positive things about existentialism, is that, if it's me, if it's my existence, then it's all on me. My happiness is on me. My freedom is really on me. So they embrace this idea of total freedom, but they also embrace this, while we're free, we have a responsibility to make something of ourselves and to do something with our lives, whatever they are, while we're here. And I've said that a little bit before. But while they are free and they have this responsibility, look at your next note. This freedom and responsibility are the sources for their most intense anxiety. So when you feel that pressure of, I only have so much time and I'm free, but I have to make a difference in this world, well, they're saying that kind of knowledge is what burdens them and gives them it makes them have even more anxiety, because am I doing enough? Am I doing what I'm supposed to do? Who am I? All these things go through their minds. And they tell you in the next step, this can result in hopelessness in their personal lives. The positive is they can assert possibility of improvement, and there are possibilities of altering human nature and society are unlimited, but human beings can hope for aid in making such alterations only within themselves. So, hey, I think one of the positive things about this movement is that you really have to look within, and there's a responsibility and a freedom